Barnes, that's what I was going to suggest, was that we start recording. Are you streaming this on Facebook also?
I will be, yes, in just 1 minute.
Okay, let's get that going. Okay, we're all set, looks like. So
my computer was being uncooperative.
yes, I have that sometimes, that it doesn't want to accept my button clicks. It's really annoying, but it usually wakes up after a little while. So I'm glad to see all 5 of you here, and in the action of the council to create this committee, there's a question about who is chair, and I said I often find that it's best if these committees self-organize. So I would suggest as self-organizing that you have a little election of a chair now, and then the brand new chair can start the meeting and run the meeting. And I'll be happy to hang around, and as Director Barnes said, I'm happy to sort of share some of my experience and knowledge of the current town seal, and sort of the process that got us to having this committee and to the interest in the new town seal. So would anyone like to nominate someone else or themselves for the position of chair?
Mr. Mayor, can we ask if there's anybody who would like to declare a candidacy here, if anyone is actually interested or explicitly interested in it?
That's why I said nominate yourself or
okay, well, fair enough. Yeah, that makes more sense.
or someone else.
I know this might be a bit naive, but what do the duties of the chair consist of?
So the chair will run the meetings and will set draft agendas in advance of the meetings, and work with Director Barnes for making sure that people can attend and things like that. And we'll probably be asked to periodically report to the council about the progress that the committee is making. So occasional council meeting attendance would be part of this. Of course, the 2 council members are supposed to be attending those council meetings anyway, so it'd be pretty easy for that to have happen. Because you're self-organizing, then you don't have to choose Robert's rules as your process for running the meetings. You can choose some other way to do it, or you can choose Robert's rules, and there's a lot of background on that, and that's how it'll work. So nobody seems to be jumping to be the chair. So I guess you could have
as the artist, the working artist in the group, I probably feel like I have the least organizational skills out of the 3 of us.
There goes my idea.
So I'm gonna go ahead and put that out there, but I'm willing to support anyone else's candidacy.
I like that was like an anti-nomination. Yeah. I was like, not nominated.
Such a Sherman-esque statement there.
I am down to support anybody that would want to run. If we end up in a spot where nobody's running and we just need somebody to do it, I can step up. The only thing is if there's weekend commitment, I work occasional weekends, so that's, I guess, my biggest obstacle, but throw that out there.
Okay. I nominate Jamie Spann.
Second.
All right.
Okay. Anyone else interested in running? Doesn't look like it. Anyone willing to?
Easiest election ever.
No,
I would have been. I mean, this is a convenient self-serving excuse, but I would have been willing to do it. But I do think it should be a resident rather than a council member as chair.
Okay. Yeah. So if there are no other nominations, shall we go ahead and have a vote? All those who wish to vote for Jamie Spann, please raise your hand or say aye.
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 I saw 2 hands there, Jamie. So it looks like it's a unanimous election of Jamie as the chair. Congratulations, Madam Chair.
Why, thank
Um,
you.
Congratulations.
And I will hand off running the meeting. Director Barnes, if you can put up the draft agenda. And any questions you have about running the meeting, I'm happy to be the parliamentarian for as long as I'm here this evening. So ask any questions you want. And so, Jessica, do we have an agenda? Councilmember Lingua, do you have your hand up? Was that voting, or do you have a question?
Oh, no, that was a vote.
Okay, that's what I assumed, it was still up, so I thought I'd ask. Okay, Madam Chair, you have an agenda before you.
All right, I call to order this meeting if it is not already called to order. And it looks like we'll start with approval of agenda. And then amendments to agenda.
So the question is whether there are any amendments to the agenda. Director Barnes, if you could scroll it up a little bit further, so I think the whole agenda will show on screen at the same time.
Thank you. So before we get this meeting started, are there any amendments to the agenda? They're not reflected on this document. Sounds like a negative. All right. Are there any stated conflicts of interest for anybody with the following agenda items that you see at this point? Sounds like a negative. So we'll move on to the first discussion item, the process for design of the town seal. Yay! So we'll start with the timeline. Does anyone have a projected timeline? Yes.
I will jump in. At least part of the idea for the town seal redesign was that we would try to have things going in time for the next budget to know. So there will be certain costs associated if the seal does change, including new seals for various places around town, new badges for the police department, just various new signage in certain places, and so it would be nice to at least have some progress on knowing whether the committee is leaning towards recommending a new seal. One other thing I'll say about the timeline is that there is an election in the first week of May, and so that should just be worked into your thoughts about when you want to do it. I would not recommend presenting new designs at the May meeting, because usually the May meeting is only concerned with accepting election results. And that's all I can say about the council's view at this time up with the timeline.
Thank you. All right.
I have a question. When it comes to timeline, are there specific kinds of reviews that we need to make space for? And I know that there's the community input section that's right under timeline, but depending on what we, how we want to chunk this out, essentially is what I'm thinking of, is like from a timeline perspective, you know, what are the different phases of the process and how long we think each of those phases should take, but also knowing that there are, you know, we're asking for community input, or, you know, bringing things to the council, that all builds into the timeline. So any sort of recommendations, I guess, from Mr. Mayor or Ms. Director would be super appreciated.
And I do have a question for community input. I was unsure, in my mind, I can see this working 3 different ways. One, where we reach out to the community and we say, like, what is important to you about Riverdale Park? What in your mind is indicative of this community? And share with us your symbolisms or what you want expressed in this seal. The next one is we ask for submissions from the community and then vote within us and then put a limited amount out for a community vote. And then the third thing that comes to mind is we see if we can come up with a design or a number of designs, 3 to 5 amongst us that we all like and approve of, and then put that out for a vote amongst those. So I didn't know if anyone else had any other ideas of how community input could be integrated. And then if so, after, if we could decide kind of what path we want to take. And I think that will affect how the timeline looks.
Yeah, I was thinking back on I'm trying to remember kind of peripherally about how the Cheverly Seal redesign went. And my understanding was that I believe they did somehow they did like a community forum where they allowed community members to submit thematically what they would want to see changed with the seal or things that they felt that were important to them about the town. And then they put out, I think, a request for qualifications or proposals from design firms with the list of ideas that the community came back with. And then the firm that was chosen then came up with, I think, 2 or 3 different seals. And then there was like a community vote. And how all of this was like orchestrated or laid out, I can't remember, but I think that was kind of loosely how the process went. And so I don't know, what conversations were had about the seal kind of prior to this meeting, but that seemed like it was a pretty good process for rolling it out.
I will chime in, Madam Chair, if this is okay, and say that I actually heard that it went pretty well in Cheverly. So if we could borrow from their process, I think that would be a good idea.
Definitely. Yeah, it sounds like a great process they had.
Yeah, because I remember I went to my father's house in Cheverly and they had, I guess they'd sent out like a little newsletter with the 3 different options, and they asked everyone to kind of pick the one they like and I guess bring it back, or you could log on to like the website and do like a ranked poll vote thing. So I don't think it was very complicated. I think once they kind of figured out, kind of thematically what they wanted to incorporate in the seal, and then they found a design team that could do it, then it was just kind of a logistical, piece for getting the community to chime in on which one they wanted.
That makes sense. I like that plan. Is this something that we are going to want to decide tonight, or does anyone want time to think about that prior to deciding to move forward on a similar template than that Cheverly did?
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, that sounds like a good process to me as well.
All right, is
I think that
anybody
process makes sense.
against it? No? Okay, let's plan on following their template.
The Cheverly model.
So, I think for the first step of that, it seems like opening up to the public to ask what they want changed, as well as what they want to show in the new, or what they want to be represented in the new seal. Is there a time frame that we want to try and target on accomplishing that by, and we can start working towards that date? I know with the holidays coming up, everyone's probably a little bit busy and sidetracked.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would recommend that we kick off any sort of community involvement in the new year. And I know that feels like a really far way away, but it's going to come here faster than we know it. And I think folks tend to just be focused on other things and don't have the bandwidth or have all good intentions of getting around to doing stuff around the holidays. And then, family obligations and travel and all that kind of good stuff piles up.
I think New Year's a good time for change anyway. Everyone's like, oh, new year, new town seal.
Love it.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
So just want to mention, Director Barnes probably would have jumped in, that there is a November 15th deadline for getting articles into the town crier. And then there's not a town crier that goes out in January. So I'd recommend that that we try to get a notice in there that it's happening and schedule a meeting for January to start receiving it. And that would be a good initial target, would be to get an article into that edition of the Town Crier. It's astonishing to me how many people read the Town Crier. It's really the best communication medium in town as far as I'm concerned.
Perfect. Thank you for that insight. That's very helpful. Any other thoughts for the time being on either community input or things that we need to be mindful of between now and preparing for January launch of town information notice? We have November 15th deadline for the Town Crier. Okay, it looks like the next bulletin, unless anyone else.
I believe that Councilmember Lingua has his hands up, or Member Lingua.
Oh, shoot, I didn't see it. Yes, please. Oh, there it is.
I know it's a very small little hand. There's not much I can do. Sorry. They had a little wave feature. I would activate it, but it doesn't. So, Mr. Mayor, if memory serves me somewhat well, and I know you would probably know this because you are I'm tipping your hand here. You're a trove of information when it comes to the current town seal. But wasn't there something in Mansion to Municipality about the process of how the current seal was created?
The process.
Or at least how the design came about and wasn't there something in Mansion to Municipality about the town seal?
There definitely is some discussion there. I haven't cracked that book open in quite
Who
a
was
while.
president?
But you tell me, Mr. Lingua.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know when the last time you cracked the book open, Alan.
Who was
but
president when I did it?
yeah.
Can't even remember that.
Okay.
No, I
well,
thought you
the
meant who
point
was
being,
president when the previous seal was drawn up.
Clinton's. Oh, no. That was when the book was written. Well, anyway, my thought is that as I thought it would be good background for folks as the committee is introducing this idea to the community, they had some background about how the current seal got made. So everyone's kind of starting, from a general point. Is that something that the committee think would be a good idea to include in the December publication?
To include the information about the history
yeah,
of how the current seal was.
Yeah, a synopsis on that.
Yeah, I think
it
that
would
makes
be
sense.
insightful.
Can I say one thing? I'd be curious to know just like how the committee was formed and like what the thought process was around that in relationship to the seal. If any of the council members or Mayor Allen, if you all have any kind of context for that, it might be helpful for us to kind of figure out how, what the next steps would be in terms of community input.
You mean when the current seal was designed?
Yeah, or just how you all were thinking about even when you were coming up with the idea for this task force or for this committee, like what was the thought process around that?
So for from what I remember, and Mr. Mayor, Mr. Lingo, correct me if I'm remembering incorrectly, but the issue is that the town charter stipulates that we must have a town seal.
Okay.
However, whenever the current town seal was created, there's no record of it being formally adopted by the mayor and council or any sort of official process. And in needing to go back to do that, there were conversations about the current composition of the seal and whether it tells the entire story of our town as we would like it to be told, to communicate that we are a diverse and inclusive community.
Yeah,
And I could editorialize on that, but I'm not sure anybody wants to hear that at that point. But that's how this came about, if I recall correctly.
yeah. And so going back, thanks, Richard, and going back to what David was saying, I think that's the kind of information you probably want to put out in the town crier, just giving them that background about how this committee was formed and kind of what we're doing, and then we can circle back on a new or more details as we start figuring out what the process is going to be for the new seal.
I would say that I agree, but I would just flag that this will likely be a sensitive topic for people, for some people. The Riversdale Mansion is on our seal. That was a plantation where people were enslaved. It is part of our history. I don't think it is a part of our history that we can or should erase. But I think I personally would like to see the seal tell a fuller story than that. But there are longtime residents of the community who are very attached to the mansion and the history thereof, and have put volunteer hours at the mansion and all that kind of stuff. And we need to hear from them and whatnot. But that's just to say that we should, I think, be sensitive to that concern as in anything we communicate to the public, that it's possible that some people will see this as just they want to take the Riversdale Mansion out of our history. And I don't think that's the intent. And it's the community or this committee's job, I know, to determine that intent. But yeah, I would just make note of that.
Have there, Richard, to follow up on that, have there been any conversations with the new executive director of the museum, Maya Davis? Because I know that she's been talking about kind of a reevaluation of the House Museum, and I'd just be curious to know if maybe having
know
some input from there would be
Councilmember
helpful.
Foe has had those conversations. I'm
Okay.
not, I would think that other members of the council, particularly the mayor, have had those as well. I personally have not.
Okay.
So I spoke to the at a meeting of the Historical Society. I think it was in September. May have been August, and they had gotten a message that Riversdale was going to be disappearing from the seal, and I said that that was absolutely not in our charge, or that we were leaving that decision to this committee about how to treat Riversdale. I'll sort of layer a little bit on top of Richard's note, our statement, and say that there are many elements of the current seal, and maybe this will, I was thinking this come out in the review of the current town seal. There are many elements of the seal that no longer exist. So they are landmarks that existed, and they've been gone, many of them, for 50 years or more. And so it just seemed that when we hit the centennial, and it was 100 years after the founding of the town, unfortunately, just as the pandemic was really raging, getting going, that it was interesting to look at the seal, to think about redesigning it, and updating it, since many of the features just didn't reflect the community, even the geography of the community anymore. So that's I'll just put that out on top of what Richard said.
I think that one way that might help with looking as to how we want to write up the November 15th endeavor. I understand, I guess, wanting to know like the history behind the seal, and like, oh, if we're making a new seal, like what does the old seal represent? Like, are there things that you want to carry on? But I think you can either look at it as the history of Riverdale and getting to this point, or Riverdale as it is now and like the moving forward. Like, so I don't know if that kind of helps which direction you want to go, or if you want to be more inclusive and have a little bit from both sides. I don't know what the feel is of the committee.
Yeah, what I just typed into the chat is my sense is provide historical context for forward motion. So like framing it, you know, in the town crier, because I don't know how much space we get in the town crier to do this too. So when
As
we
much
get,
as you need,
yes, sorry, what'd you say?
as much as you need.
Oh, truly? Okay, that's good to know. Because I'm always thinking of the
The
word count too, of like how much space do we get? How much do we get to say?
Someone else is a writer.
the editor is here, so she can answer all your questions.
Councilman Lingo is right, as much as you need.
Okay, great. But my sense is that providing historical context, but in the framing of moving things forward, right? Like I don't know how useful it would be to get into all of the details around how the last seal was formed, but maybe pulling out some of the elements and the reasons why it has come to the table to potentially refresh or to put it out there that, you know, maybe it's time to redo, and we're curious to get community input on what they'd like to see if we revisit the seal, or as we revisit the seal rather. But I think for these kinds of things, like being sensitive to the variety of viewpoints that people will have around this, keeping it a little lighter on the focusing on the past and the historics, and really placing it in like a, you know, what's the call to action? We want people to give us what they think, I think is a good focus. But that's just my opinion. I'm curious to hear other thoughts.
I'll jump in again. I know because kind of there's so much about Riverdale now that drew me in. Like the reason I live here now is not because of what Riverdale was like 50, 100, however many years ago. It's what it is now. And I definitely am all for kind of celebrating that with, I think you had a wonderful point, or the way you worded it, with historical content. What you said is a great way to kind of a little bit of the past, and then focusing also on the now, what Riverdale is now, because it is still so dynamic. It has so much to offer. And I'm even thinking like in my mind about creating a seal, it's like, how do you not put in too much information? Because there's so many good things that it currently has.
I agree.
It is a challenge that hopefully we will meet.
I would just say, I think we would get a significant amount of pushback if there was no historical elements in that, and not that that's what anyone's saying here. With regards to the mansion, I don't think it's a good idea to necessarily remove it unless we're going for just a complete radical redesign. But like I had thought about the idea of including, like with the mansion, some sort of symbolism of roses to honor the Plummer family that was enslaved on that plantation, so that you know, as I was saying, we're telling a fuller story rather than just like, we had this mansion here and isn't it cool looking.
Yeah,
We can explain the roses symbolism for folks that aren't familiar.
Sure. Sure, but I think it goes back to what Jamie was saying too, about just like incorporating things that, you know, pay homage to the past, but also like we could shine light on some new things that are happening. And I think the other thing too is, I think because of the Chevrolet conversation about Mount Hope and them taking that off the seal, I think that's probably the reason why you would get some pushback for this committee. But I think it's a different situation here in Riverdale Park too. I mean, the community uses the museum, or Rosedale House Museum, for venues. Park and Planning runs it.
Yeah.
They have a phenomenal director. They do great programming. So it's a completely different conversation than you know, like an old slave plantation that's out of use, and no community members engage with that place. So I think this is more about addition than subtraction. And I think if the conversation is about that, then I think we're going to be in good shape.
I think that is all very, very helpful and very good input. Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else have any thoughts or recommendations on this matter at this point before we move to the next topic?
I just have a question.
Mhm.
Who will be writing this for the town crier? Do we have a volunteer? Is this a by committee kind of thing? I love a good shared Google Doc is all I'm saying.
I like that idea.
I agree. I like the synergy of having. I'm a terrible writer, so I will not volunteer for that, but I can certainly help. I would say maybe we could discuss what we want covered in this article, and then if we could get somebody that would be willing to host the Google Doc and move forward, or if we have a writer that's wanting to kind of run with it, and then we can all hop in and do commentary. I think that might be a good option. So,
They say, Melissa, can you write?
Yeah, so I was going to say, I'm more than happy to take a first pass at writing it. One of the reasons why I joined this committee is because I don't know the history as well. And I am not I'm still newer to Riverdale Park. So as long as we have a discussion and a solid outline to work from, I'm happy to take first pass, but would absolutely want others to jump in. And, I need a good editor. I need a good, in the theater business, a good dramaturg. To keep me to keep me honest to any factual statements. Yes, Richard.
Just in regards to hosting, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Barnes, correct me if I'm wrong, but this would need to be hosted on a town asset, as these are official town records. Is that correct?
I think that the letter that you actually send needs to be, a real document that we can keep. But in terms of drafts, then it's not a final product; it's a work product, and
Gotcha.
so those are not subject to the Public Information Act.
Gotcha. Okay.
Is that your understanding, Director Barnes?
Yes, that's my understanding as well.
I've dealt with way too many MPIA requests, and my half-written town crier articles, I've never submitted those in response. The things that I have before the final article are mine.
Fair enough.
all right.
And Melissa, I'll just say that if you have any questions about the history, then I think that Councilmember Lingua and myself have a lot of that knowledge, and I'm happy to talk to you offline or through email or whatever else to flesh those out.
Perfect. Thank you. I just know that November 15th deadline is November starts next week. So I want to make sure we're on top of it and able to get something in.
Right.
It is
And
looming, it is.
I have my own mayor's report that is starting to loom as well. So as Director Barnes will tell you, I tend to miss the deadline by a little bit, but she has been very gracious to accept it a few days late.
And the deadline is on a Tuesday. So we certainly would not send it to the printer before the end of the week. So there's plenty of wiggle room.
And listen, Jamie, what I can do is do a little bit more research into the process from the Chevrolet one and maybe put together like a little one pager to give a rundown of what that looked like and see what we want to use for our process.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
All right, so to make sure that Melissa has kind of a skeleton of what we're wanting to include, we want a dash of history, but focusing on the upcoming public forum. To my understanding, there's no date set, just maybe something like look forward to a public something in January, where we want your input on what you want to change about the current seal or what you want the new seal to reflect. Maybe put some stuff to get people jazzed about Riverdale, kind of highlight maybe some of its many assets are kind of what I would pull together. Does anyone else have any thoughts, what they want to include in this article or highlights that they want to make sure get included so Melissa can make the best starting point for her?
Yeah, just in terms of the day, I think we do need to set a date to be published in the Crier. Rather than a look out for something in January, since as the mayor noted, there won't be a January issue of the Crier. So if we're having a meeting in January, we should probably think about a date that we can get into there.
If I may, Madam Chair, just add one recommendation. So we have a community conversation series that our first meeting is actually coming up in November to talk about redistricting. The one in January certainly could be talking about this whole process and getting community feedback. And that'll have a higher platform, if you will. So it's typically on a Saturday at around 9:30. The virtual format has been really good for us as far as community meetings go. And we could do either January 7th or the January 7th is the first week in the first weekend in January, or we could do the 14th or even the 21st, whatever works best for everybody.
Miss Barnes coming through.
I would push towards either the 14th or the 21st, just because everyone that I know still has a bit of coming off of like the vacation, either high or lethargicness, depending on how much they eat.
Yeah, I would say the 21st would probably be best for me personally, looking at my calendar. But if there are any objections to that,
Let's do the 21st.
Okay.
And everyone is good with the idea of having this first conversation for the community conversations in January. Any objections to that? All right, great.
And this is just an opportunity to hear more from residents. Yes, like that's basically, we're just asking, like, what do you want to see? What are your thoughts? What imagery, what themes come to mind? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Great.
It works well if you have a moderator, just kind of making sure that everyone is heard and giving, just making sure everyone's respecting each other and not talking over each other. So the community meetings that we hosted, for example, for the permit parking meetings were really open-ended and they went really, really well. Everybody was really interested in providing input. So anyone can be the moderator, or I'm happy to do that as well. It's totally up to you. But the setup or the format went really, really well.
I'm gonna vote for you, Jessica, just so you can teach us how to do it, and then we'll once we get the training wheels off, we can go from there.
You get to be Leslie Knope for the day.
Yeah. Because I think that's probably going to be me. I have to take one of these duties.
All right, that sounds like a great starting point. Does anyone else have any thoughts or things that at this point they would like to include in the write-up for November 15th?
I would add the or include sort of the information the mayor was talking about when he was mentioning the budget, like where this will go, like not just on the cover of the town crier, but on the police badges and uniforms, on the signs around and things like that.
Yeah, do we have a comprehensive list that somebody could send that includes all of the places where the seal could go, whether for the town crier or just for our knowledge as we're thinking about the scope of the project moving forward?
I don't think a list exists currently, but we can create a list of at least the official platforms where the town seal is. I'm sure you don't want to get down into the details as far as it being on the cover memos and things like that, but some of the highlights I think we can do. I'd be happy to put that together.
Yeah, I think that as we get further into this project, knowing those kinds of details could be helpful as far as like sizing goes, like when you have a designer working and trying to figure out like, you know, would this work if it's this little on a memo? Would this work, you know, from that angle? And I'm sure Rush, you can speak to that better than I can as far as those design aspects. So I think now is not the time to get in that far in the weeds, but I think we will want to if we're doing like briefing with designers.
That brings me to another thought, which I'm not sure if this is relevant or not. I know some places, thinking more logo wise, but they have one version that's for like larger scale items, such as like a flag, and then a smaller or like redacted, reduced graphic for something that could be as small as like a pin that's on the lapel. So as we move forward with the design and see to what type of complexity we're getting to, that might be something to keep in the back of the mind, as if we're considering two different versions or not.
Yeah, and usually what the designers will do is they'll give you like a style guide. So they'll isolate fonts that'll be incorporated into the seal, but then you could pull certain aspects out of the full design and use them individually for different things. So say like whatever font they use for Riverdale Park, that would still be a part of the seal technically, but then you could pull that text off and put it on a shirt or put it on a pen or whatever, you know. So they'll have like a style guide for colorways and fonts and the actual seal once they come to the final design.
Nice, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why you're here, Rush. You got the good ideas.
So
I try.
Melissa, do you feel comfortable with that amount of information to start with? Do you have any other questions that come to mind currently?
Not for right now. I'm sure as soon as I start sitting down and try to outline something, that I'll have a bunch of questions, but I have everyone's emails. So
Yeah.
you're all very
Yeah.
welcome for what is to come.
Bring
No,
it on.
I'll be
Bring
gentle with how much I need. I'll make sure that I have that I batch questions together. And but yeah, I feel like this is a decent jumping off point, that's what I should say. Thank you.
So do we have an idea of, let's see, before I move on, any other things that fall under the bullet point of either recommendations to the mayor and council or review of current town seal? I think the next.
Would you like me to touch on the what's in the current town seal?
I would. I'm curious. Everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be cool.
Jessica, do you have a copy of the seal, or should I didn't track one down, but I can probably find.
Did you send it in the email? I think
She did. Yeah, it's in the. I have it here in the email too.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I saw someone holding up a button there.
I was trying to like turn it the right direction, but the mirror effect is messing.
Oh.
There it is.
There it is.
Okay, so let me rearrange everything here on my screen so I can get it as big as possible. Yeah, that's much better. So I'll just point out the design I'm on. So first of all, the history of my involvement with this was this was sometime in slightly after the mid 90s, so probably 96, 97, 98, sometime in there. And the only versions of the seal that existed were physical versions of it. So there was no file that had the information in it. And I was learning to use Adobe Illustrator and said, hey, why don't I redraw the seal in Illustrator at full vector resolution, and then it can be used. And so they gave me a copy of one of the printed out versions of the seal, and I had to work from that. And so I had to figure out exactly what was going on. Someone has their microphone.
I think Ling was giving you accompaniment.
He's playing a little theme music there going in the background. And
Well,
And
you are
so-
telling a story, and you do need something in the background to tell your story to.
Okay, very good. So we could go ahead and start. I'm gonna leave the text around the edge out of it. So we'll start at the top. The past is prologue is the town's motto or slogan. I can't remember exactly which it is. And that was established back in 1920. And just historically, the town was founded as the town of Riverdale and not Riverdale Park. And part of that was that the Riverdale Park Development Company, which had built most of the houses in town at that time, people were a little bit unhappy with, so they kind of wanted to leave that behind. And I think the past as prologue may have been part of that, is that they were saying, okay, you know what's been going on here for the last 30 odd years. We're moving on from that, and we're going to have a great shining future in the future. And directly underneath that, of course, is the mansion. And I don't even know if the mansion drawing is accurate, but it was what was on the seal. And the two trees to the side of it, I believe, were meant to evoke the elms, the famous American elms of Riverdale at that time. So they were enormous, and there's even some poetry that's been written about the elms of Riverdale. And of course, they were all killed by Dutch elm disease. And so there are only a few of them left in town, but I believe that that is what the trees were intended to evoke. So that's, item number one that is on the seal that doesn't really exist anymore. I believe that there's one or two left in town, but there used to be hundreds, as I understand it. When you go below that, then there are two bridges over a stylistic river that has two channels in it. And again, that was something that existed in the town when it was founded, that the Anacostia River had two branches, and there were two bridges over it, where we currently have the one bridge, the Riverdale Road Bridge, over the Anacostia. You may or may not have heard that that bridge has gotten so old that it needs to be replaced. It's on the edge of being structurally sound. And so that tells you how long ago the river was replumbed by the Army Corps of Engineers into having a single channel, and the bridge was rebuilt. And that was probably in the 1950s that happened. I could go and look at the plaque on that bridge and figure that out. But that's item number two. There used to be the twin bridges and the twin channels of the Anacostia, and those are gone. There's a single bridge there now, and that bridge, in fact, is going to be replaced soon. Going a little bit further down, I'll skip over the RP there. On the left is a locomotive. The town of Riverdale Park was, of course, a streetcar and rail suburb. And so the train tracks were very important. And that was one of the elements that was picked up in the previous seal. We still do have the train tracks. I'm not expecting them to go anywhere soon. And so that's a piece of the symbolism that I think survives. On the right-hand side is the first truck for the Riverdale Volunteer Fire Department. And in fact, if you zoom in far enough, I don't know that this is, I don't know whether this is a bitmap or vector version of it, then RVFD is on the license plate of that pumper truck. So that was the first truck, and the fire department certainly has still has a warm spot in their heart for the fact that truck appears on the seal. And the volunteer fire department, for many years, perhaps I would say actually even dating into when I moved to town and became active in town government, was a very important social place that people got together and and did things at the volunteer fire department. And so the fact that their fire truck is on there, I think reflects how important it was to the community for many, many years. It's still very important to us for the services that they provide, but I think it's not the sort of community focus that it used to be years ago. I'm going to skip over a few features, including the spade there, and the item at the very bottom is the Riverdale Baptist Church, which used to be near where the Calvert Cemetery is now in the historic center of town. It's been gone for a long time. The Riverdale Baptist Church as an organization is now in Upper Marlboro. And again, that was another sort of central place that people gathered for community events. But that building has been gone so long that there's actually an Eagle Scout project in the last year or two where they laid out where the foundations of that building had been. And that was a research project to figure out where the foundations of the building had been. So it's been gone for a really, really long time. But at the time of the founding and for many years afterwards, it was an important part of community events. So I'll loop back now to a few of the graphic elements. And David, of course, feel free to jump in if I get any of these items wrong, or if you think I'm glossing over something here.
Well, one minor addendum on the fire truck was that fire truck appeared on a U.S. postage stamp.
That's correct. Good point. Thank you for reminding me.
Philatelic history to this fire truck.
Okay, so one of the early mayors, I believe maybe even the first mayor of Riverdale Park, had weekly card games at his house. And so there are several card elements in the seal, sort of buried in the seal. So there's the spade above the Riverdale Baptist Church, and the two sides, left and right of the bridges. Then there are club symbols that are in there, and I think that there are some hearts that are sort of hidden in certain places too. Those are the only ones that I remember from when I did this did the reseal, but definitely those are there. The colors of the town seal, I believe, are actually perhaps specified in the charter. I didn't go back to look for those, and of course the two flags that are on the church. There's the flag of Maryland on the right, and the United States flag on the left. I think that the tops of the decorations on the top of the flagpoles are actually also clubs. That's another place that some of the card symbols appear in there. And let me tell you that drawing the details of the locomotive and the fire engine, that took a long time to get those just right, and trying to figure out putting the tire patterns on the tires of the fire truck. That took a while to get right. So those are the elements that are in the current seal, and I'll pull up the PDF document and myself on my own screen. I don't see it, so I'll find it. But if you want the super high resolution, and even if you want the Adobe Illustrator file, then I still have those lying around. I'm happy to provide. And that's all I can think of.
The residence of Mr. Warren, the first mayor of Riverdale Park, is the address of where, at the corner there of Oliver and 48th Avenue, on the property that is now owned by former mayor Mr. Michael Herman.
The house sadly burned down in recent memory, and but was rebuilt by Mr. Herman to roughly approximate what was there before.
It's a very faithful reproduction, save for the addition he did put on, which he was going to put on, but also in that similar style.
Mr. Mayor, as part of this process, is there any consideration of resuming the tradition of poker nights at the mayor's home?
We can discuss that. We can definitely discuss that. I wouldn't mind having an occasional poker night. That sounds
All
good.
right.
You said something about the colors are probably specified in the charter. So are the colors, is that an element that is predetermined for any new or refreshed imagery?
I haven't thought about that, but certainly I'm always of the opinion that advisory committees should do what they think is right. And so, you know, the redistricting committee has had some discussions about recommending changes in the number of wards in town. And so if you guys think the colors need to change, make the recommendation, go ahead. That's just my opinion.
I
It's,
like
Now-
you know,
support for whatever change is the best change.
I would agree with that, but one caution if the colors do change is that there's an issue of to me anyway, that annoys me, of creeping College Park, claiming portions of Riverdale Park as greater College Park, which would mean anything. The colors of the Calvert standard might reinforce that. That's just a thought.
Well, the Calverts did live here, and Charles Benedict did grow up at that house, and it was
Fair.
there that he did a lot of the research and work that went on, that he used to go on to create not only the Maryland Agricultural College, which he founded, but also in helping to establish the Department of Agriculture. So, I mean, College Park can try and claim whatever all they want, you know, and we
It happened here.
we can politely just beat them back with a stick. So, figuratively speaking, of course.
I'm just residually annoyed that when I go fishing in Gosling Pond in Riverdale Park, it's right next to College Park Academy, which annoys me to no end. But
Well, you know,
that's not
it
part
just-
of the design process here.
it just shows what a wonderful resource Riverdale Park is, in the sense that they turned to Riverdale Park to, you know, essentially put up their new expanded College Park Academy, as well as the fact that the mayor, when he brings in guests from out of town, his favorite bar to go to take them to drink beer is in Riverdale Park.
Mayor College Park.
So
Me too.
yes,
Which one?
yes, and I have proof of that too. So anyway, the point being, I mean, let's be who we are. Let's celebrate the Calverts even more so than they do, because it works to our advantage.
It's all fair.
And there's this, I mean, and again, this kind of, and this is roughly on the peripheral of the dynamic and diverse history that is that building. That which I'm sure we'll have many discussions about in the coming weeks, and in terms of how we want to represent, how we would want to consider representing that history on a town seal. So, and I'll leave it at that.
And then quick side note for the color that was brought up. I don't know if this will be a factor, but I know for like patches and sewing on, having multiple colors might affect the price. So I don't know if that's something we're mindful of. Maybe try and, like, as we move down the process, be mindful of the number, whatever colors those may be, the number of colors that we go with. The end.
I think that's smart.
All right. Does anyone else have any thoughts? I think maybe we should plan our next meeting while everyone's here and on
Yes.
the phone or on the call.
Yes, great idea.
Melissa, do you have a time frame that you would like to kind of get the draft written? Because I think maybe a good time for the meeting would be after the first draft goes out.
Yeah, let me think about that. I'm in a wedding this weekend, and it's gonna
Oh, yay.
typically I'd be like, oh, I can definitely get something, in shape this weekend that people can
Wedding
look
on
at it.
Halloween weekend?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's gonna be
I bet it's gonna be fun.
it's gonna be a
That
blast.
sounds great.
It's
That
gonna-
sounds
and they're
great.
really like
Man.
leaning into that theme.
So many ways then to
Yeah.
dress to impress. There you go.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. But yeah, so so this weekend is kind of out for me to sit down and really like focus in. But I think I can probably get something together by the end of next week. So what would that be?
That looks like it's bringing us to Thursday the 3rd, Friday the 2nd, Saturday 5th, Sunday 6th, and then we could maybe even bring it into Monday or Tuesday of the following week, depending on everyone's schedule and the time frame for that.
Yeah, I
How
mean,
do weekends work for the group? We'll start there to see if we're going to include that or rule it out.
For me, it's case by case.
Yeah, I was gonna
with
say,
kids,
like,
yeah.
your weeknights are usually pretty good, except for Tuesdays, but weekends, it just depends on the case.
yeah. Why don't we do
I travel a lot.
what does the 7th look like for people? The
The
evening of
7th of November?
the 7th of November. Yep.
We have a mayor and council meeting that night.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
So typically, just a little bit on the scheduling. So Monday nights, the first and last Monday of the month are typically out. The first Wednesday night of the month is typically, is it first METC? And then the second Wednesday of the month is typically the green team. So somewhere in there, Wednesdays and Thursdays typically are better, or a Monday on an off week. I guess Tuesdays too. Sorry, we have a kind of hectic
Yeah.
calendar.
So what if we look at either Thursday the 3rd or Tuesday the 8th?
I feel. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, Tuesday's election day, just.
Tuesdays.
Oh,
Yeah.
shoot.
I like Thursday the 3rd.
I will do my best. I'm a little nervous that might be a little tight for
What-
me to write.
How about the
What
10th?
about what about Wednesday the
Thursday
9th
the 10th.
or Thursday the 10th?
Yeah, I could do the 9th or the 10th. That
Yeah.
that feels safe to me, except for I just want to be sure that for folks that are reviewing and giving feedback, that's enough time for us to then turn around something to be included in the
Well,
prior.
What about
We can do it.
Did you
And-
say,
and-
I'm so sorry,
the
did you
9th?
say the second Wednesday is also flagged as something for meetings?
It is. The second Wednesday is typically the green team.
Okay,
Sustainable
let's
Maryland.
do the 10th then. And then Melissa, if you are good with it, maybe once you get to a point that you're comfortable, you could always share the draft with us. And so we can have like eyes on it before the meeting. So, that might help if someone's feeling very strong about something to kind of get in a little bit before. Does anyone have any objections to the 10th of November?
I think that's great.
And the way that I typically work in Google Docs, and please let me know, like, I'm open to suggestions, is that when I'm drafting something, when I send it for reviews and edits and just other eyeballs, that folks use the suggesting feature or the comment feature versus deleting and completely rewriting, because then you lose a little bit of
you lose that?
of the context and what existed before and what existed. Is everybody comfortable working in that format?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Cool. Great. Perfect. Thank you.
Right, so November 10th, do we want to nail down a time at this point as well, or wait until it gets closer?
I think 7:30 is great.
Agreed.
7:30, easy.
The 10th, we're saying?
Yes, November 10th at 7:30.
Okay, 7:30 is fine. I might not be on the dot because I have to support my son in his Minecraft class through Artworks, which is really fun. But it ends at 7:30, so I might be 7:35 or so.
Okay.
And no 10-minute brain reset there.
Hey.
Look who's here.
Welcome.
I've been here for quite some time, guys. You're doing great work.
Good thing we announced this meeting. We got a quorum of the council here.
We'd have to,
Wow, I didn't
we'd
even
have to
think
kick
about
Aaron
that.
out.
Listen, I'm here for the history lesson. That's what I'm here for.
Perfect. Well, it sounds like we have a plan to kick off this next meeting. I'm excited to see how the draft goes. For the next meeting, what are the goals of it that we can kind of make sure we work towards? It's to review the draft. And then maybe have Rush Baker, if you're good with that, by that point, have an outline or a general idea of the Cheverly process that is maybe a little bit more detailed that we can review.
Definitely.
Should we set an agenda for the community conversation in January at that November meeting? If not, it would require, I think, having another meeting in December, which folks may not be available for, but
Yeah, that makes
I
sense.
think it's a good
Smart.
idea.
I
Yeah.
And for that, for the next meeting, do we want to try to, knowing that the Cheverly process is going to be something that we're modeling after, once we dig into that a little bit more, should a goal of the meeting to be to have a rough outline of how we want the process to go, like chunking things together of like when we're working on what?
a timeline as well as a process.
Yeah,
Like an internal timeline for, yeah.
that internal timeline.
So there's you guys can think about reaching out to the people who worked on that in Cheverly and inviting them to attend and provide guidance and
Oh,
advice.
that's a good idea. That's a good idea. I'll do that.
Most people I know who have been through a process like that are happy to share their experiences because they generally hope it will go better for you than it did for them.
Well said. Yeah.
Or if it went well, then they're happy to say, hey, it went perfectly and this is what we did and we want to, share our advice. So just might be a good idea.
Learn from my mistakes and share in my success. Benefits all.
And who doesn't like to brag?
Great. Are there any other things we would like to put on the agenda at this point, or any other thoughts? I think we're reaching maybe a conclusion of the meeting. And I guess just brainstorm if we do end up reaching out to different ad agencies to take this on as well. Maybe start thinking of who we can reach out to as well.
will we need a public RFP process for that?
This will likely be under $20,000, so probably not. We also have a list of vendors that we worked with, or at least reviewed proposals from when we did the town logo. So if I can kind of go through that, we have some folks and they seem really engaged because we had initially tried to see how excited they may be about a process like this. And it seems like there are several vendors for you to review and talk to and interview.
That's great.
All right. I think we might be ready to conclude the meeting. Any other objections or thoughts before we do so?
I would just say, thanks to everybody for agreeing to serve on this committee. It will probably at some point involve people expressing unkind opinions about us.
Strong opinions.
Strong opinions. There we go. So I appreciate everyone for that. And also I want to particularly say thank you to Miss Barnes, who's always here for our meetings in the evenings and suggesting doing things on Saturdays and all kinds of things like that. despite her having the 9 to 5 in the town hall as well. So thank you, Ms. Barnes.
Yes, thank you. I'm excited about this too. All
Yeah,
right.
thank you for the opportunity. This is really exciting, and I'm super interested to dig more into Riverdale Park's history and also get to know our neighbors better and hearing more from them.
Fantastic. I'd like to echo Richard's comments and say thanks to all of you, council and not, for agreeing to serve on this committee. It's very important, and it's not an area of my expertise at all. So I'm glad to allow other people who do have expertise to tap in and advise us.
I beg to differ, Mr. Mayor. I think you have the most expertise on the town seal of anyone here.
but not on generating a new one or changes to it. That's
enough.
beyond me.
I
Okay,
know.
I'm gonna go grab some dinner. So thank you
All
all.
right. Thank you,
Well,
everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you very much.